so much of our life is just optimized for convenience. Ordering food, just everything we do is optimized. So technology is always about let's do things smoothly. And you really don't want a lot of friction in your life because who likes waiting in queues? Who likes being told your call is important to us? But then this idea of like if you take out so much friction that life almost becomes a tad boring. This is when people are now starting to seek on their own terms ways to do things that are slightly bit harder, just bringing in a little bit more friction into their lives, because this is the messy bit, the unpredictable bit, uh, where serendipity happens, connection happens.
My name is Simon Waller, and this is the Future with Friends podcast, a show where I make zero attempt to try and predict the future, even though I'm a trained futurist, and instead I enlist my friends to do it for me. Thankfully, I have some very smart and insightful friends. Some of them are best-selling authors. Most will be considered leading thinkers in their field of expertise. I guarantee that every single one of them will have compelling and unique insights to share about what might happen next. Each episode, I invite a friend onto the show to explore the future of anything that they would like. I then task them to go away and create a short scenario about that future set at least 5 years from now, something that captures their hopes and dreams or maybe their fears and concerns. And then over the course of the show, we dissect that scenario. We start to think about the critical uncertainties, the alternate possibilities, and the decisions that we can make today to create the future that we want tomorrow. Welcome to The Future with Friends.
Welcome back to The Future with Friends. This episode, we're going to be talking about the future of friction. And the concept of friction is something that we hear a lot in organizations. And more specifically, we hear the opposite, this idea of how do we make things frictionless. And so in this episode, joined by a very good friend of mine, Yamini Naidu, we explore what happens if you take that concept of frictionless to its extreme. And Yamini tells this beautiful story, and probably unsurprising, Yamini is a professional storyteller, but she tells a beautiful story about where society might get to 50 years from now if we really lean into concepts like frictionless. And some of the scenarios we explore on the show have a dystopian angle to them. And with those dystopian stories, it's often about, well, how do we find the hope, or how do we find the opportunity, or how would we respond in this type of a world? This one's probably the opposite. Instead of focusing on what the dystopian looks like, we actually focus on what this perceived utopia of a frictionless society might look like, but actually realize that hidden amongst all of that are some pretty deep shadows. It's a beautifully written scenario and a really interesting conversation with a very dear friend. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Future with Friends. Hello and welcome back to The Future with Friends. Today I'm being joined by a very dear friend of mine, Yamini Naidu. Yamini, and wow, gosh, I'm like, first of all, absolute honor to have you on the show. And we've known each other for a while. Like, we've known each other for over a decade. Do you remember what our first meeting was, or where do you remember me from?
Simon, I absolutely remember you. And I was searching for your name in my inbox and I found something from 2014 from you.
Yeah.
So I remember I was sitting in the hub and you were speaking and I was totally entranced. I was enchanted. I was like, oh my God, I want to work with this person. I want to know what he does. He's just so cool. And I think then we worked formally together. You helped me just get
We
somewhere.
did. So before that, so this is Hub Melbourne. So
Hub Melbourne.
I moved to Melbourne in 2010, and at the time I was actually with a group of people. We were going to open up Hub in Perth, and then I moved with my wife and my young family over to Melbourne, and they just launched Hub Melbourne, and so that's where I kind of ended up working from, which I think is where. So what year did you turn up in Hub Melbourne then?
As soon as it opened. So that was 2010.
2011, 10, 11, that area,
yeah.
Because I also think that we were both around, there was a group called the Creative Performance Exchange.
Yes.
With Peter Spence.
Yes.
That I think we're kind of in these similar little circles.
Yes.
But you're right, 2014, we ended up doing some work together.
Yes.
And I've always just loved, I mean, so your work is, in the space around kind of storytelling. And I think you kind of started doing it before it was cool.
Yes, I started
Uh,
in 2005, before it was a thing. Everyone thought I was mad.
yeah. And so apart from the wonderful energy that you bring whenever we have a conversation, have always been intrigued about, when you bring storytellers into this space around scenarios
Mhm.
and imagining the future about what happened in that space. And so that's kind of why I've been like very keen to have you come and join me on the podcast. So it's pretty exciting.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Simon.
um, and so, as listeners would know, when you come on the show, you get made to do all the work. So we, we have it, which is kind of actually, I think there's an interesting irony given the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which we'll get to in a second. But so this idea that, I often reach out and I go, hey, Yamini, I'd love to have you on the show. And there's this kind of little bit of a quid pro quo, which is one, we can talk about anything you want, but you are responsible for writing this scenario or this story around the future. And I actually went on somebody else's podcast the other day for a group called, I don't know if you heard of the Do Lectures
Yes,
over in, yeah.
fabulous, fabulous. You were on the podcast. I love
Oh, so
that.
they've got Do Radio.
Yeah.
And again, interestingly enough, so with Do Radio, they record these radio episodes. They play them, I think it's 11 times over a week. And then that's it. They disappear. There's no permanent recording of them. So if you don't listen to it during that week, you will never actually hear the episode.
I love it, Simon. It's the idea of making something ephemeral in our
Yeah.
real world, a lot of sometimes indigenous art, it can be ephemeral, body painting or yeah. I
Yeah.
love that idea. Yeah.
And I was sharing about when I first started this podcast, I had a little bit of guilt about asking people to do the work. And I kind of made a joke because, like, I just get them to do it rather than me do it. But it's not actually that. I realized that the energy from the show comes from, the variety of different types of stories and stuff that you hear. And the only way to get that variety of stories is to get guests to contribute and write them, right? But I've actually found over time that the thing that I felt guilty about in some ways gets so embraced by guests. And when I read your scenario for the first time a few days ago, I was just like, oh my God, you could just see the amount of effort and energy that you've put into this. It's beautiful. Talk us so through around the topic that you've chosen
Yeah. Yeah.
and perhaps a little bit about why you've chosen it.
Sure. But Simon, I just want to say thank you. When you first sent that question through getting us to do, that was like homework. And I haven't done homework for a long time. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. But when I actually sat down to do it, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well,
So,
the irony of our topic today, huh?
our topic today is this idea of friction maxing. So it's a concept that a journalist, Catherine Jacob Morton, she made it popular. And I want to just make sure I get these facts right. So she made it popular through an article in The Cut. So, so much of our life is just optimized for convenience. Ordering food, just everything we do is optimized. So technology is always about let's do things smoothly. And you really don't want a lot of friction in your life because who likes waiting in queues? Who likes being told your call is important to us? But then this idea of like if you take out so much friction that life almost becomes a tad boring, this is when people are now starting to seek on their own terms ways to do things that are slightly bit harder, just bringing in a little bit more friction into their lives because this is the messy bit, the unpredictable bit, uh, where serendipity happens, connection happens. I also had an experience, just sort of when I roughly read that article, of getting on so I left home at like 5 a.m. in the morning to travel to New Zealand, to Auckland. And after kissing my partner goodbye, getting in a car service where we just say hello, but we don't chat, going to the airport, checking in, getting on the plane, getting out, 4 hours later or whatever in Auckland, checking into my airport. I had just zero to minimal human contact. So
Yeah.
even the immigration check and everything had just been smoothed out completely. So I just could, and apart from just being greeted on the plane, sitting down, besides those basic minimal interventions. And when I arrived in Auckland and I checked into my hotel room, I just felt really sad.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Like,
let's pause that because I think that's part of the conversation I think we're going to have about this scenario. But I just coming back to this concept, yeah, we have been told, especially from a business context, this idea that everything needs to be frictionless. And now, as you said, there's a kind of a movement that is actually going, no, actually, what are we losing as a result of friction? What would we do to bring this friction back into our lives in a very intentional way, if not a very selective way, right?
mm,
And I think I wrote an article, and maybe only been in the last 12 months. It's come up a couple of times in my own stuff. I talk about this idea of judicious friction. So the idea of like, how do we use friction in a smart way? And I've talked about it through the lens of a business context about how do we kind of promote better behaviors by making difficult or challenging behaviors harder. But I hadn't come across this concept of friction maxing until you shared this scenario. So what I love though is that we're taking so on one hand, you have an underlying concept that is probably the premise is relatively well understood. It's around this concept of character building. We have this 2026 interpretation of that, this idea of friction maxing. But then now we're going to project that into the future quite a long way. And we're going to see how this may play out if as this kind of trend or concept evolves. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So when we kind of talk about that point in the future, how far into the future are we going?
2076.
So we're going 50 years into the future. Is there any, apart from that's a very neat round number, was there any significance in terms of choosing that point in the future?
I think I just went 50 years, but also when I chatted with you, we thought, oh, it could be possible by then.
Yeah. And I think this is interesting when we kind of choose these. At 50 years, we can actually imagine things that are distinctly different than they are today. Whereas often, especially when you talk about things like cultural change, which can happen quite slowly, do we really imagine that the center of culture within, a group of people within society, within Australia, 10 years from now, can we imagine to be distinctly different?
Mm.
And we might find, tweaks to it or certain social, like certain belief systems that shift, especially within the political field, but we don't see wholesale change. And I think that was, but I think 50 years, given the right kind of, external influences, we could have a very different society 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to be talking about the future of friction
Yeah.
set in 2076. I'm going to throw the microphone to you. The stage is all yours. Please tell us, Yamini, about
Wonderful.
the future of friction.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon. X waited for the applause to finish. Not real applause, obviously. Real applause had been phased out years ago after the Emotional Safety Commission found it created unhelpful variation in performer self-worth. Now, audiences just tapped appreciation into their wrist nodes, and the speaker received a clean, aggregated warmth score. Today, X had scored 9.7. X nodded at the green screen. On the other side of the world, her avatar was still smiling, still glowing, still accepting holographic handshakes from thousands of delegates who'd paid premium rates. X turned off her screen. She'd not left her apartment in 91 days. This was normal, sensible even. By 2076, human beings had finally admitted what everyone had always known for a long time. Other humans were the main source of friction. Humans forgot things, misread tone, took offense, smelled strange, asked follow-up questions. 2076 was the year the world was finally friction-free, smooth as silk. Names had been the first to go. Too much admin, too many variations, Sarah with an H, Sarah without an H. Once memorably, Sarah written as Uttara on a coffee cup. Nobody could explain it, but everybody agreed it had beautiful energy. Siobhan. Siobhan alone had caused an estimated 4.8 million pronunciation incidents before the Universal Identity Simplification Act. Now, everyone was identified by a biometric signature. Clean, accurate, no awkward. Sorry, how do you say that again? Still in private. X sometimes missed names. The offering, the correction, the tiny smile when someone finally got it right. Her AI wall blinked. You have completed 91 consecutive days without voluntary human contact. Urgent wellness intervention recommended. X sighed. Not friction deficiency has been linked to emotional thinning, conversational atrophy, and meaning fatigue. Would you like to order friction? The research was irrefutable. Humans needed friction. Not constant suffering, obviously, not like the dark old days of the 2000s. The early trials had been a public relations catastrophe. But now, small, regular doses of difficulty had been shown to improve creativity, resilience, humor, moral judgment, and what the Wellness Authority called messy humanness. A person could go 99 days without any friction. But on the 100th day, friction became compulsory. And no one knew what they could get. A flat battery, a wrong address, a neighbor at the door, public transport, in extreme cases, a printer. X had never pushed it this far before. Better to choose, she thought. And the menu arrived. The menu gave her 3 choices. You could order friction in 3 sizes: microfiction, nostalgia fiction, or mega friction. Microfiction again gave you more sub-choices. You could choose happy, surprise me, or sad. Hardly anyone chose sad. No one needed more sadness. Ever since friction had been fully eradicated in 2050, humanity had become instantly sad. Not the theatrical kind X saw in social media archives, where humans cried in cars and announced they were done with drama while actively creating more of it. This was quieter, lonelier. Everyone had it. The ministry said sadness was just part of the human condition now, like breathing. X's friend, because you couldn't have names, sometimes the sound was acceptable. So X's friend worked on the friction maxing user experience team and had tried everything. Once he tried to spend a day without AI and had lasted 13 seconds before sobbing into a rotary phone. Another time, because he'd ordered mega fiction, he was kidnapped from his own apartment in broad daylight and held in a cave for 24 hours. He described it as transformational bliss. In a post that received 6 million empathy taps. X hovered over the idea of microfiction. She knew megafiction was not for the faint-hearted. It was 24 hours, no bailout, full waiver. Nostalgia fiction was nice chaos. You could get a rotary phone, a paper map, delayed trains, manual cars, unscripted small talk. She looked again at micro. Happy sometimes gave you a compliment from a stranger. Surprise me might involve a delayed delivery. No one wants that. Sad had once sent someone an old voicemail from their dead mother. And sad was now under review. X selected nostalgia. Please choose your preferred intensity. Human, X said. The system paused. Human is no longer a supported category, replaced with human-like. Then, from somewhere beyond the walls of her silent apartment, she heard a sound. A knock. Not a notification, a tone, a calibrated audio cue. A knock. 3 uneven taps. She stood very still. Nostalgia fiction has commenced. Your selected experience includes 1 unscripted human encounter, duration unknown, emotional outcome not guaranteed. Failure to engage will result in automatic upgrade to mega friction. A cancellation fee applies. Something moved inside her chest. She almost asked AI to identify it. That's what people did now. But then she stopped herself. Only that morning, she'd watched a 2025 archival video in which a woman with very large earrings said humans used to do something called sitting with the feeling. So I thought it was very unhygienic. It sounded unhygienic. But now she stood there letting the feeling move through her. She searched for the word. Anticipation? Hope? There was another word. People had used it in the old archive. It's a small word, ridiculous, really. Happiness? And for the first time in 91 days, X smiled and walked across the room to open the door.
Oh, so good. As I said to you before, like when I invited you on, I was so excited to see what you would write, given your, your background in storytelling. And I had forgotten, 'cause it's been a while since I've seen you on a stage. I'd forgotten how beautiful you are at delivery.
Oh, thank you. I know. Yeah.
Like I think that, when you lean into it like you did there, and the sound effects and the inclination, like the intonation and everything like that, it was so beautifully delivered.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
thank
That was
you.
and so when I first read this, I don't know, maybe you mentioned this on the phone the other day. My favorite author of all time is Ben Elton. So Ben Elton was famous for writing The Young Ones,
Yeah.
Blackadder.
Yeah.
He wrote the musical Queen. Like he's done something like
He's
incredible
prolific.
stuff.
He's got a whole body of work. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's written this bunch of like his novels, which often kind of lean into this very like almost like they take what we're seeing in the moment to its illogical conclusion. And they often have a very satirical aspect of them. So stories like Stark, Inconceivable, This Other Eden, Gridlock, all goes, yeah, we see this thing that. And what happens if we just play it out a little bit further into the future? And when I read this and hearing you read it as well, like that was the vibes that I immediately picked up. It was almost like I was reading a Ben Elton short story.
Yay, that's a huge compliment. I'm a huge Ben Elton fan. I've got all his books on my Kindle as well. And I was
Yeah.
reading Gridlock after we spoke. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've got to revisit. Gridlock, I reckon, was the first one I read. And I think I read that back, would have been in the 1990s. So it is time. Like, I don't, you know how like music, you just, you can listen to it over and over again. Whereas it feels like films, you can watch regularly, and then books, it feels like you read even less regularly again. Is that the same for you and me, or is that
similar? And sometimes you go
Yeah.
back to an old book, but it hasn't aged well, or you remember it differently, especially a childhood book, or yeah.
So tell us, we're going to obviously do a bit of a deep dive into this, but I'm curious, someone who is a writer, you've obviously done a bunch of research around this topic.
Yeah.
Obviously piqued an interest in you, first of all. So talk us through from having your interest piqued, being invited to do this exercise and write a scenario through to this. Like how do you go about doing something like this?
You always think, what if you push everything out to the extreme edge? And, just so many trends inform this, like how the wellness industry is always trying to sell us wellness. So if they take all the friction out, then they're trying to sell it back to us in these acceptable doses. So what that would look like. And also I was reading, there's this Ben Stevens, I forget his name, but there's this, one of these tech bro billionaires who's on a quest for immortality. He's got this whole protocol. I forget his name. Sorry.
Yeah. But like, it's like trying to create like, this idea of living forever. You're right. There's a term for it as well. Like,
Correct. Yeah. So then I'm thinking,
it's like hypermyelin for the body or something.
Yeah. And isn't death the ultimate friction? No one wants to like go. So I thought, what if we took that out? So in this scenario, humans live forever, this 2076, because we've taken all friction out. So we've all become immortal. But then it raises really interesting questions like, what will people do for jobs? How will we all live? So then you have to think, okay, then you've got to have universal basic income. But people still need purpose and meaning, especially if we're not allowed, or our contact with other humans is very minimized. because humans are the biggest form of friction. And then I was talking to a friend with this whole idea of friction, and she said, "Oh, family is the biggest source of friction." And we were laughing and we were saying we could almost interchange the word family and friction sometimes. They can be like
Yeah.
interchangeable.
When you put one of the notes I made here around the mega friction and what with the 24 hours, like in-laws come and stay for 24 hours. It's like,
So everyone has that personal experience, right?
yeah.
I know.
Well, the irony of it is my in-laws do actually come and stay for 24 hours regularly at the moment. Sadly, my mum's, my wife's mum hasn't been well.
Yeah.
And so she often comes and stays with us and stuff. And to be honest, I don't, funnily enough, I say the in-laws because that's the joke, but
Yes.
weirdly, the friction for my wife in that situation is way higher than it is for me. Like, yeah. So I don't know what you read into that.
Yeah. It's too interesting family
But I do
dynamic.
think that idea, and I think definitely pick that up. And I think, just from a perspective of the storytelling itself, I think that the fact that it's very multifaceted,
Yeah.
although there is a core premise,
Yeah.
which is around this concept of friction or the reduction in friction, the fact that you bring into it these other kind of related threads,
Yes.
I think it adds a richness to it and a believability to it because you go like, yeah, I could see how that would impact the way that we the way that we about human names, for
Sure.
instance,
Sure.
or these different types of the AI wall that blinks at you, and all these types of it's like, oh, it's not just this one idea. It's almost like you've built a world. And I actually found myself a few times when I was when I was preparing for this conversation and trying to imagine this, I actually found myself in this world.
Yeah. Oh,
I
lovely.
found myself as X
Yeah.
in her apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I imagined this idea that, you might have like walked out into the hallway a few times, but you would never have seen anybody because everybody else was also in their apartment.
That's right.
And you went out onto the street and there was a bunch of drones and delivery things
Correct.
going
You
around.
never see anyone. You're right.
You never really see anyone. Like, and
Yeah.
even the streets would have been swept,
Yeah.
by robots. Like, oh, and it actually took me to this place of like, like the drop in,
Yes.
right? And we used to do when growing up in the 90s or whatever,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
you could rely on getting people on the phone. And if you were just in the neighborhood of someone you knew, you'd just drop in
Yes.
just in case they were home, right?
Sure.
And now you definitely like it's almost the idea of doing the drop in without
Oh
phoning.
my God.
And the
Finding a
idea,
date that we both are available, like at the
yeah.
same time and place is so hard,
But
finding
I
a
can't
time.
drop in without phoning. I can't phone without texting you first.
Yes, I can.
Like, it's like
It's
I've got
crazy.
to text to phone and phone to
Yeah.
drop in. And it's like,
Yeah.
it feels like
Yeah.
this is what it brought up for me, this world.
It
And
is.
again, I felt like there was I did feel a sadness around that.
Yeah. And this idea of drop in, our kids may not be able to relate to it because it's not their sort of. And people used to always tell you, oh, just drop in if you're in the neighborhood. And now we don't even say that because
Yeah.
we know, it's not going to happen. Or what are the chances? Or, yeah, it just feels, it doesn't feel right anymore, Yeah.
And what do you think that is? Like, I mean, do you think okay, honestly, if say we finished the podcast recording, obviously because you're busy right now, but sometime this afternoon you're at home and a knock at the door
Yeah.
and a friend just turns up, how would you
Yeah.
feel about that? Do you think?
Quite excited, but also like you just want everything to be so perfect, right? You don't want to be like having a bad hair day or like the house messy, but that's just part of friction, isn't it? We just gotta
Yeah.
accept each other more and just be happy to see people more.
Yeah.
So
I'm just kind of wondering where the feeling comes from. And I do think it's probably, do you reckon maybe like the filtering phone calls is the gateway, like almost like the gateway to therefore not thinking that we can drop in on people?
yeah,
Because like how sometimes once we get so many phone calls and we get bombarded with things, every now and then we even have a good friend who's like, it's not now,
yeah, yeah.
I'll call them back in an hour or so, but just not now,
Your
you
energy
know?
sort of depleted, and yeah,
Yeah, or almost, and I kind of, on one hand, rile against the fact that we don't do the drop in, and yet 100% I've had that experience of a friend calling and just going, it's not now. And maybe it's part of this idea that, well, because I've got a phone and you've got a phone, Yamini. And so if you called me and it wasn't now, and I called you in an hour and it wasn't now for you, well, then you can just call me again. The
Phone
effort
tag, yeah.
required to go backwards and forwards isn't high, and eventually it'll click, right? But only both of us willing to do it when the energy's right, you know.
Stars
But
align.
the stars align. But then we take that same premise and then we take it to an environment, as you said, where the drop-in's like, well, I'm still like, I live down on the Mornington Peninsula. Like my friends aren't around a lot. Like they don't happen to be in the neighborhood very often. I'd actually like them to drop in, but they
Yeah,
don't because I think we take in the experience that we have in one domain and we're applying it to another and it's going
yeah,
like,
yeah.
probably shouldn't just do that without calling or texting or, having a written invitation.
And we don't want to take a risk in in our relationships. Like we don't want to inconvenience our friends or by dropping in unannounced or by ringing them, you know? So
Yeah.
we might be a little bit too tender around these things. Whereas, yeah, it's worth poking the bear sometimes and say, you know what, I'm going to drop in. Drop in.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can bring it back. And so friction, that can be the ultimate friction max when people drop in unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Can become like
Yeah.
a wellness thing. And isn't it the ultimate wellness thing? Like I went to the gym the other day and, just dragging myself, how some days you drag. And my friend had just come back from, I didn't know she was back from like 6 weeks or a long time away overseas. And I was so happy to see her.
Yeah.
Just that unexpected thrill of seeing someone you like. And, so I gave her a big hug and she's like, you look amazing. I'm like, you look amazing. It was just so wonderful and unexpected. So that's the sort of friction I want more of in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this dropping in would be that, wouldn't be? It's that sort of energy. Yeah.
Yeah. I read, you shared with me some of the research that you did going into this and some of the examples around kind of friction maxing. And some of them, like, it's, there's this kind of, I find this almost like a tension in it, right? On one hand, they're stated as being these quite significant things, right?
Mm.
And yet, if you read the list, they're fairly insignificant. It's like, I didn't clean the house and someone came round, like,
Real
or
life, I know. Yeah.
yeah, like I went to the grocer and I didn't get my stuff just delivered to me.
Mm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I turned off Google Maps, like, and you go like, on one hand, it feels like almost a parody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is maxing
Yeah.
friction. Like that's not just like this is as big as friction as I can imagine.
I can handle. And it
Yeah,
also reveals our level of privilege.
100%.
So much of the world is already, living in hard circumstances and living with maximum friction. They don't want more. This is sort of what I'd call turn off, turn on friction, the privilege of,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. If it all gets too much, we can always stop it again as well.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
like they were recommending, strike up a conversation with a stranger, browse in a bookstore, walk to pick up dinner. All of these are small, uh, but it's a starting point as well.
Mm. But I think there's a risk, that if that's friction maxing, we don't just see it as a starting point, we see it as being the end game.
Yeah.
Like it's like, cool, I did friction, tick. Like
I ticked it off my wellness along with my journaling and hydrating.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I
Yeah.
ticked it off my
I
chart.
don't know if I need more character. I mean, I can build a bit of character, but not too much. I've got a fair bit already, if I just be honest with you.
You can never have too much character. I must admit, I didn't realize until I came across this term that I was already, this idea of talking to a stranger is quite at the edge of that friction maxing because all of
Mm.
us, we fear, the rejection, the awkwardness, the whole, the whole social construct around it, I would say. But about a year ago, I decided I would start I would often see someone with a fabulous pair of shoes or, you know, just really cool sunglasses. And I'd be like, wow, I really like that. And I wouldn't say anything. And the moment passes. So these things are like you're ephemeral. Either you do it then or it's gone. And so I decided I would just tell people. And I call it giving them a love bomb. And they just light up like 99%. I've never had anyone go, oh, they all just so happy. They go, they're like, I really got it. I wasn't sure. I really liked it too. Or my grandmother gave it to me or whatever. And it's just delightful. And that's it. I'm not wanting any more than that from them or them from me. Like, we're not going to exchange numbers or become friends.
Yeah.
But this idea of a love bomb just made that whole, it's a little bit of friction maxing, but it's a positive friction maxing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But again, I think is this song like it speaks to something that we all yearn for as well. Like we yearn for acknowledgement
To be seen. Yeah.
and to be seen, right? And so that's, and I kind of, this is one thing I couldn't quite, I couldn't quite work it out. And maybe if we both, like, maybe collectively we can do a better job than I could do myself. Some of these friction maxing things um, relate to something that's like a deeper human need. And I think some of the ones even around kind of the concept of, you know, like I think when what you're talking about there is it's not there's an act of it that's related to you, which is around, gosh, this feels hard.
Yes.
But it relates to something that's bigger than us around this need to be seen, our sense of connection and belonging around us. And some of these other ones around food,
Yeah.
you know, for instance, like it's not like the ability to cook nutritious food is like when we kind of go the frictionless option, we get the takeaways or the Uber Eats, or like we're actually, there's a decline. And then other things just feel very kind of arbitrary,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like they're just doing it so I could do it.
There's a
And we,
scale in these things, isn't it? There's the minor right to the major. But I think the
yeah,
underlying thread with friction maxing is not so much doing things that make you uncomfortable, but also in seeking the other. I think we're trying to seek that connection. It's a move away from loneliness and isolation. So I mean, this is why we've seen this massive explosion in events like Tough Mudder and Spartan. And on the weekend, I went to see my friends in the Ultra, which is, I think it was Melbourne backyard race, like Last Man Standing, where everyone runs 6.1 kilometers, and at every hour you run 6.1 kilometers, and whoever lasts the longest, I think the person who won did it for 73 hours, wins.
wow.
So it's a very tough race. And last year when my friends went to it, there were only 60 participants. And this year when they went, there were over 200 participants.
Mm.
So it was, you can just see the size of it. So people are looking for those experiences. But when you actually go there, so we went to see them and support them on Sunday, it's like a festival. Everyone got tents up, there's music at the start of every lap, everyone's cheering you on, your friends and family are there, there's food. So like all the people in the event are totally friction maxing. Like we're doing something that we never do in real life, but they dance surrounded by, and they all built a community. Like they all know the ultra people, they were all helping each other. Everyone was sharing, ice packs and giving advice. So I think what you're saying is there's a scale. There's some things I can do alone, and I'm looking for tiny bits of friction maxing, like walking down and getting dinner or whatever. But even when I walk down to get dinner, I'm connecting with the person who's giving me my dinner.
Yeah. So I don't think it's about, it's that some things we just do them because like they're arbitrary.
Yeah,
But they don't actually add a life skill to us that's actually meaningful to us.
yeah.
It's like I just did something that was hard to do, something that felt hard, whereas others feel like leaning back into something that's bigger than us,
And into being more human.
being more human. I think
Yeah,
it connected. I like a lot of the stuff you talked about. There's a connectedness, but I think also perhaps to a certain extent, our physical fitness and well-being is actually like I almost thought about this through the lens of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Which I know is there's like the validity of it is questionable, but the premise of it, this idea that we have certain basic needs that we need to meet, and only after those needs have been met, we can actually start talking about higher order needs.
yeah,
Whether or not, like, what I felt in this world that you've described is so many of our needs are being met.
yeah.
And we got to the pinnacle of these things. And instead of doing something meaningful with our lives, we just end up doom scrolling social media, right? And then in that moment, there's a whole bunch of people sitting on couches all over the world going, looking at themselves, going like, what am I doing? Like,
What do
why
I
am I
do with my
doing this?
life?
Let's
Yeah,
go out and run 6 kilometers every hour and
yeah,
see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
So people are intentionally finding, I just need something bigger than this.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's something that gets me back in touch with myself. And one of the ways
Mm.
to do that is through this physicality of running or, other people or and some of these, like, the cold shower and stuff like that is friction maxing again, but it's very much chasing a wellness metric, whereas others may not be so much about getting that wellness metric. It may be just about just being more human, leaning into the messy bits of life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe when the messy bits shouldn't be measured or can't be measured,
Correct.
and it's almost by the very act of measuring it, we try to put order around it and we've actually taken away the messiness that was there in the first place.
And now a word from our future sponsors.
For decades, brands have been asking, how do we make it easier to buy our products? But maybe that's the wrong question. In a world of one-click purchasing, ease is no longer a differentiator. It's the default. Everything is optimized. Everything is immediate. And everything is meaningless. At Earn It, we help brands reintroduce something the digital economy quietly removed: friction. Instead of selling them your boots, we challenge people to hike 50 kilometers first. Before purchasing a new camera, we reward people for taking 100 photographs and hosting a slide night. Instead of discounting coffee machines, we track 30 days without using a takeaway coffee cup. Every challenge builds commitment before the transaction, not after it. Customers don't just buy your products, they earn them. The result? Lower returns, higher satisfaction, real loyalty. Earn It. Advertising creates desire. Earn It creates commitment.
Can I share one thing that I struggle with? And so, first of all, to acknowledge the nature of this exercise
Yeah.
is you just get to describe a future.
Correct. Correct.
You're not forced to go through the internal logic of, yeah, tell me the steps that go from where we are now that take us to this place. Though you do point out some interesting little kind of milestones along the way where things change. But one example that I've kind of used in my own work quite a lot is the shift that we have around things like music.
Yes.
So I use the example back in the 60s, if you want to know if someone's a Rolling Stones fan, it's like, just go to their record collection. And if they've got half a dozen Rolling Stones records, they had a half a dozen back in the 60s, let's say the 70s, you had half a dozen Rolling Stone records, like, wow, you're a fan, right? And there's a certain level of effort that went into collecting that many records. We had less disposable income. You had to go like the record shop, you can't get them a mail order, et cetera, et cetera. And now you would go like, if someone has Rolling Stones records, it means nothing because we all have every record because we have Spotify or, or Apple Music or whatever. And so now the only real question of whether or not you're a Rolling Stones fan is, have you been to the concert? And how many times have you been? Like, if you haven't been 3 times, like, are you really a fan? Because, probably everyone like goes, I should go to a Rolling Stones concert just because it's the Stones, right? So
You go
going
once in
once,
your lifetime. Yeah.
once doesn't even count. Like, so many people would have gone once,
Mm.
but as I said, as a real fan, you've gone 3 times, right? So I've kind of used this, and I think there is a movement at the moment as well towards, these kind of shared experiences, human experiences that we get in concerts, even though we're surrounded by smelly people.
Yes.
So in one hand, we have this thing going on, and then in this scenario you paint 50 years from now, we kind of have somehow this kind of reaction against being around other people because of that messiness that's associated with it.
Yeah.
Can you see, like, how do those things maybe play out?
The
Like, what is it that
Yeah.
happens, do you think, somewhere 25 to 30 years from now where things like constants suddenly go, they're on the nose, so to speak?
Yeah. A couple of things inform my scenario. The first, I was listening on the radio and they were talking about feral fans at an event. And like an event had to be like almost cancelled. This was just in Melbourne yesterday and stuff like that. But I think they're allowing it. This sort of, the whole world is getting slightly unhinged. There's a breakdown in sort of public order, isn't there? Parents in soccer matches punching up each other. This just rise in violence and this breakdown in civility. So someone said we just don't know how to have how to be disagreeable anymore, how to have discourse, healthy discourse with each other. We've all just got so polarized.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the sort of mega friction, which just becomes unbearable for humans. So that was sort of one trend that informed me. The other was I always liked the idea of this universal basic income. So, that would make all of this possible. But just also sometimes, Simon, we chase an utopian ideal. We think, oh, it'd be lovely to be in a friction-free world. Imagine no traffic jams, no queues. But then we never think, what is the dark side of that? Is that
Yeah.
isolation? Is that disconnection? So it's almost like you can't have, it's always got that dark, the shadow side.
Yeah. And I had Kath, our
Yes,
friend
I
Kath.
saw the protest. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was something that she shared in that about like her own experience of storytelling and both in her work, but as a journalist and a supporter of other writers. And she had this kind of epiphany around how often we lean into the dystopian because that's the only place.
Correct.
Because without that, we can't get people to realize all the stuff we need to change. And yet, in this, we can actually find in the utopian,
Yeah.
we can also see the shadows.
Yeah. The dystopian has light and the utopian has a shadow, right?
Yeah. And I think that's something that's been really interesting for me because even in all the work I do, I've always kind of erred slightly towards the dystopian, but I've always enjoyed people finding the light in it.
Yes.
It's like you paint this picture and they go, oh God, is that possible? Like, yeah, that's possible. And they're like, oh, but imagine we did this. And people find this kind of hope and stuff in it. And I kind of found that. So yeah, and going back to that point about the events, so that was actually announced around playing the FIFA World Cup
Yes.
in Federation Square in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And the state government said, we're not going to show it live because of the feral fans.
Correct.
And there's been a protest.
Language, feral fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's now been overturned, which I think is great. But there's another trend around that where increasingly, if you go to a concert, like it's divided up into more and more sections. And there's the VIP section, and then there's the VIP section. And then you've got this, like, that's the standing room bit, which was the whole concert previously, is now a segregated little fenced off bit. Everyone else has seated tickets, or there's family sections, or there's a no alcohol bit. And it's like, oh, we can't even just do that.
Yeah.
Well,
just those hierarchies, those divisions, that status signaling, it's all in there, right? In that pool. Yeah.
But also, if I can find that experience that's just slightly more customized to you, maybe you'll also pay a few extra dollars for it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I got the alcohol-free bit and it was really great because there wasn't any of the feral fans there.
Yes, you're paying for the friction-free experience, right? You don't want feral fans, you don't want alcohol, you want sitting room, you want to be close to the stage. Yeah.
One thing that I actually meant to bring up earlier, because we'll talk about the writing of this, and I was complimenting you on the like this kind of multifaceted style of it, but there's other thing which I forget to mention, which I think is really worth raising, is that in there is also some very personal things as well.
Yeah.
And there is a story that you told me years ago about the coffee cup.
What is that? The coffee cup?
Is this right? I think you've told me this story before about the name on the coffee cup thing, but it was your name.
That's me, yes.
And I'm also one of those flawed human beings who can't remember everything. I forget things, right?
Yes.
But I do remember this, and when you shared it in the scenario, it just triggered, like, it was like, it brought back this like half a memory. Tell me though about your own experience, like with the names and stuff like that, because obviously Yamini Naidu is not super common.
It's not. It's common. It's commonish in India, but it's not that common anyway. Yamini. People find three. I think if you've got 3 syllables in your name, people find that hard.
Yeah.
I always go Yamini, like harmony is my thing. And one time, an MC was introducing me, and he was like, "How do you pronounce your name?" And I go Yamini, like harmony. And again, I maxed out. I went Naidu, like can do. Because Naidu can do is our family motto. Don't you have a family motto? It's obviously a thing. No. And he introduces me. He said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome our next speaker. Harmony can do. So I got this whole thing about names. And obviously, when I go for coffee, I don't like everyone. There's a pressing queue of people behind you. And the baristas are perfectionists, aren't they? So they're like, is that a Y or an A? Is that a Q? Is that an A? I'm like, my coffee name is Angela. So close. Yamini Angela. But ever since I've started sharing that, there's a whole subculture around coffee names. So many people give themselves, and even people with simple names like Sarah, she says, no, they write Kara, they write Tara, they write Zara. So like, you know,
I get Simon Walker a lot.
oh, Wokabola, yeah, totally you would get. But Simon, I'm sure they don't get Simon wrong, do
No,
they?
they're pretty good with Simon, but
Yeah,
Walker happens a lot, which in the bigger scheme of things is pretty like it's literally like L and K are next to each other in the alphabet. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost you've mistyped it. Actually, they're next to each other on a keyboard as well. So
yeah,
maybe they just keep mistyping it. I don't know.
yeah,
But I do think that that's an interesting insight around, Yamini having 3 syllables. And obviously within Australian culture, we would like to abbreviate that
yeah.
just to Yams.
Yam, yams, all of that. All
Do you
accepted.
get You get
Yeah.
Yams or
Yam,
Yamo?
yams, yeah. Yamo, yamo. I haven't got yamo yet. I know.
For
Yeah.
anyone who's not in Australia listening to this, they're very much a part of Australian culture where we love to shorten names and then like add an O or something weirdly on the end.
Yes.
So Simon often becomes Simo.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
It's like they flipped the N and the O, Simo. Like, what was that? But also, if you've got
Yeah.
a short name like Brooke, becomes Brookie.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Or
like,
E on
what's
the
that?
end,
You know, yeah.
but then you'd be like Yamini, and that doesn't really work.
Yeah, it's a very, what you're saying is it's a very sophisticated, nuanced thing, Simon,
Yeah.
that non-Australians can't just easily grasp.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Just
doing
shorten
it
it to one.
instinctively.
But the
Yeah.
standard rule is you shorten it to one syllable and add an O or
Yeah.
an E.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
rule of thumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if in
Yeah.
doubt, ask Simo. What was it again?
Simo.
Simo. Simo.
Yeah. So the other thing I just want to cover it off because I made a note about it and I had remembered that story and I hadn't quite remembered exactly how you told it, but I think it's a beautiful story and this idea that, it's like names are so messy, like literally you've just come up with an extra one purely for
So
copy
messy.
lines.
Yeah. And I've got friends whose name is different on passport. And, if your name's different in your paperwork, your life is hell.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like you can spend the rest of your life just sorting that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so and let's go this conversation though around, we have this realization though that friction has an additive value.
Yes.
Like it builds character. Or you talk about the examples you give around kind of creativity and even like how perseverance and all these things come from it.
But also humor and belonging and intimacy.
Yeah.
Like love is always risky, isn't it, Simon? And love is full of friction. Like after that
Yeah.
initial honeymoon, hallmark card, period. It's full of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, quite legitimately, I think when you look back on long-term relationships or long-term friendships, you remember the hard things that you did together. Like the fact that you got through them is part of the validation of the power of the thing, So I think there's a really interesting aspect of that, which can easily be lost in our pursuit of a frictionless environment.
And also when you fall in love, people will say, like, travel with the other person, like book a trip and go somewhere and see if you make it through that because, travel brings up all this friction and really tests us all.
I had a very good friend of mine recently. We caught up for a coffee and her kids are about to leave home.
Yeah.
And so she's actually booked a 3-month trip through Europe with her husband to find out how they're going to get on without kids around. Like, for so long, kids become part of every conversation you have.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happens when we don't have them to talk about? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And she says, I need to find out. So we're going to go 3 months by ourselves with our kids and just see what happens. Do we find things to talk about?
The kid-free Europe love test, right? I love it.
But one thing I want to talk with this is that you frame this very much through what happens in our personal lives.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, part of your premise could even be that there's a universal basic income, which means maybe people don't like work, though this person X is obviously a keynote speaker.
Yeah.
So there's some work that still exists in this world. I'm interested in our different approaches and beliefs around friction in a commercial context versus in a private life. So I feel like a lot of this messaging around friction-free is a commercial thing and business driven.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think that the language outside of this concept of friction maxing, I don't think we walk around our personal lives going, God, I wish there was less friction. We say things like, I wish things weren't so hard. Oh
Yes,
God, don't have time for that. I'm just feeling burnt out. Like those kind of, the language is different, but the language around friction has a very commercial aspect.
it does. Yeah.
Did you put much thought into what the friction is there? What does friction maxing look like in a commercial context? Or do you think in that world there's like, no, we're still trying to make everything friction free?
Yeah. So there's that polarity, isn't there? Where
Mm,
they're trying to be as friction free as possible. And that's what we pay premium for, which is
yes.
what you described with the concert experience, isn't it? So they're monetizing. So they would create friction because that allows them to charge a more premium. Friction only works if there's friction free to contrast. Friction free only works if there's friction to contrast it with.
Mm,
So it's like the airlines, isn't it? It's like that boarding class one, the platinum, how they get to board first, and then
yeah.
the rest. So it only works because other people aren't allowed to board. So I'm sure they'd find a way of even monetizing friction. I don't know. I haven't thought deeply about it, but if anything can be monetized, commerce will find a way to
Yeah, it's
monetize.
almost like there's a hidden cost of it as well. I mentioned this to my daughter on the drive to school this morning. I said, I'm doing this episode, what comes up for you? And she's asked me to explain a bit about friction. I'm like, the idea of, say, Amazon, the idea that you just literally click two buttons and next thing something gets delivered. And she's like, I can't believe I got a pencil delivered for $1.
Yeah.
But then she was also saying that she'd been reading recently around some of the other practices around Amazon that enable this frictionless experience for us. So when you return something, it just gets destroyed, right? They don't try and repackage it and resell it
Not
or
all.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Or even if there's excess stock, they don't distribute it to needy people in the world. It's just destroyed. Like there's a hidden cost.
Massive hidden costs.
There's a massive hidden cost that allows this very privileged premium friction-free experience for some. And yet that has been enough to make Amazon one of the most valuable companies in the world, selling a frictionless experience to a handful, but like a small subset of wealthy people around the world. And but as I said, that knock-on impact and that cost is significant. And I think that,
When you think of that supply chain that makes this friction free, there's massive friction at the other end of the supply chain for those people living in those circumstances. Maybe
mm,
not even making basic income, working hideous hours,
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's, I've had some of the same conversations around AI. People think AI and they see AI through their personal experience, not understanding that there is people in refugee camps, in developing nations being paid minimal wages to basically label up all
Yeah.
the content,
Content.
who are
Correct.
witnesses to people's very private videos
Mm.
that's been recorded with their meta glasses, and being told, what are you seeing in this video? And they don't understand that their frictionless experience is actually really just a process of outsourcing friction onto a whole bunch of other people. And often, as I said, people who are not in a position to necessarily question
Yeah.
what they are being asked to do. And I wonder if people would have that same desire for the frictionless experience if they go, no, it's not really friction free. It's just like friction shifting. We just move the friction onto somebody else.
Just exactly. Passing it down the line, isn't it? Because it's
Mm,
unbearable for me. Imagine if you could do that with illness, with all the other bad things that happen in life. You could just hand it off to somebody else. Like we outsource. You're saying I'm outsourcing my friction.
yeah. And I feel like that feels less comfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think the fact that that feels uncomfortable is why companies, especially big tech companies, do such a big job of trying to hide it.
Yes.
So they won't have their own employees do that work. They'll hire another company, then hire some subcontractors that does this. So there's almost like we can pretend we don't know about it in a way. So I think there's that, which I kind of go like, even in this utopian world, I wonder who actually is holding all the friction for us.
Who's paying the real price, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that causes us enormous emotional friction. The worst kind, isn't it? Causes us such a mental upheaval and friction, which is really good because that's the challenging, the provocative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also imagine in this world that there would be people like, we have these extreme sports people
Mm.
like that do stuff that, like they get sponsored by Red Bull and they jump off cliffs. There was a guy a few years back who literally jumped out of a hot air balloon at the edge of space, right? You don't remember this?
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy literally, they put a hot air balloon right up into the highest of atmosphere and he parachuted from the edge of the atmosphere down to Earth, right?
And then?
Fully sponsored by Red Bull.
Okay.
Imagine in this world, there are people who are the equivalent of extreme sports people who, whether they hand out compliments randomly on the street or actually there's a daredevil aspect of this and perhaps even whole TV shows around it, whereby there is people are tuning in to witness these people who are willing to go to the grocery store.
But yeah, we watch. There's the Excel spreadsheet World Championship, right? So we're all sitting watching. So if that's possible, anything's possible. We're all at home watching on these massive screens, watching someone go take that risk, go to a messy in-person grocery store. Yeah.
And I mean, given the Kardashians, we've already had TV about people hanging with their in-laws anyway. So
that's been done, Simon.
It's been done. Yeah.
Yeah. But what you are telling me is that humans, we're deeply interested in other humans. Even if they're just pouring cereal into a bowl, we're deeply, we have this visceral need to see other humans and, be with other humans. And yeah.
When you, your own experience of writing this and researching this, as I said, I saw some of your notes and I really appreciate the effort that you went into in the development of this. And which again, a very frictionful experience.
Very full of friction.
On a podcast, right? The standard come on a podcast thing is that you just get to come on, sit in all of your expertise, do this kind of soft self-promotion, right? And then I go away and I do all the editing and all the rest of it. And you just and it is the opposite, right? So
I love it.
We don't position you at all. We don't really talk about what you do except in passing.
Yeah.
I mean, right. And then you do all the work.
You're making me actually live in that world. You're making me live the role model it and live it. Immersive.
Yeah.
It's an immersive experience for me.
But it has, and this is something interesting, when I've had the surprising feedback. Like I said, when I first started doing this, I used to feel this sense of guilt around oh, hey, when you come to the show, but would you almost would you mind? Is it okay to ask if you would do this? Is that all right? And can I help you at all? And then yet, if I go, what's the most common piece of feedback I get from guests is they get to the end and they go, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's, maybe there's a secret sauce in there somewhere around. Choose the topic that matters to you. Talk about something that you care about. And then you've just been given permission to go away and do the research and the thinking, and that gives you then the clarity that almost we're always seeking, or something like that.
You know what, Simon? It's based on the oldest principle in the world, which is do the work.
Yeah.
The work is full of friction. It's full of creativity. It's full of all those messy things. And it's not a shortcut. It's not an easy hack. It's not 10 prompts.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what people enjoy. They enjoy actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, do you reckon, one thing I couldn't quite come to the conclusion around is that a certain amount of friction is healthy for us? I think we all agree. It builds resilience and capability, but too much friction can be damaging.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? So it can damage our confidence or actually physically impact us.
Yeah.
And I so one thing is there's in any healthy system, there has to be the positive and negative feedback loops. And how do we know when too much friction is too much?
Yeah.
Is kind of one thing that but also, resilience breeds resilience, right? If you have a certain amount of resilience, then you have the capability to deal with more friction. And that then ultimately can tend to build your resilience, right? And it actually took me all the way back to doing my master's thesis, which was around kind of concepts of socio-ecological resilience theory and how you apply that to organizations. And there's principles of resilience, and some of those resilience, like, is that we need obviously some fat in the system. Like, we need to have some excess capability.
Yes.
Diversity and complexity actually add resilience,
They do.
because, if one part of the system gets damaged, there's other parts that are still healthy. There's a number of different principles. And I was kind of trying to apply that to this, and almost even apply it to the experience I see people having in the world right now, where it's like, oh, we just have no excess capacity. And without that capacity, concepts of more friction for the fun of it seem really challenging. And so given that, like, on one hand, you've painted this world which is slightly utopian and future focused, and we have now, like, we have the experience people are having now. And given the experience that people are having now, what do you think people can do, like, to tap into this? Like, again, I feel friction maxing is kind of like an example of what that might look like, but it feels like there's a shallowness to it. Is there something more? Are we missing something here?
I think so. I think what we need more of, and the ultimate friction, is to be kind. Be kind to people, because we're all going through messy stuff. Life is hard. Instead of always like chasing that wellness metric, making it about me, trying to, work on something on myself. I think it's more reaching out and being kind to other people. So when you're stuck in traffic, someone cuts you off, or there's an opportunity to be more civil, to be more polite, to be kind. Yeah, making space for other people. I think that's going to really help us. That'll be, for me, the ultimate friction maxing, because it's unexpected.
I
Step
think
out
that's
of
something
your
really.
car, people are going to expect you to, punch them up or whatever. But instead of responding with anger, you respond with kindness. What would that be like?
I think there's a lot of depth to this, what you're saying, in almost more than we have time to explore within, like, this episode. But I think it brings up some other research. And again, I'm not an expert and I'm not a psychologist or something, but I know there's research to say that when you are dealing with your own challenges, one of the best things to do is help someone with theirs.
Yes.
Like, that's actually, by taking the energy and the attention away from ourselves, we open up like something else inside ourselves. And I think something more primal, in a sense, about our connection with other people and community. And I do wonder if that's actually, like, if I'm just so maxed out, I can't help anybody, I've got nothing to give. It's the very act of giving that gives you the capacity to do so.
That's right. And so, again, looking for other ways, the normal ways of recharging, and always making it about me, and more purchases, more wellness, more this. Yeah.
Yeah. So what if the frictions that you chose were intentionally externally focused, intentionally not self-serving?
Correct.
Yeah. I think that's something very interesting to explore. I really like that idea. And it starts with just basically complimenting people on their outfits when you walk the streets.
Yeah, and being really cool, not being weird and stalkery about it.
It feels like it's a line that have you crossed that line sometimes, or you just.
But don't forget, like, it's easier for me as a woman. Like, I can compliment people, but I think it'd be harder, say, like for you, Simon, to walk up. It could be harder, but it doesn't have to be. Let's make it easy for everyone.
Yeah. So the one that I find is, so I love dancing, and
perfect.
a few times a year I go out to music festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I quite often get complimented on my dance moves.
Oh, I can't wait to see them. That's fantastic. I love it.
I once actually went to this disco show, and this is the best compliment I've ever been given in my whole life. So it was like this kind of, it was Chic, the 70s disco band. They were playing with Noel Rodgers and Chic, playing at the City Mire Music Bowl in Melbourne. And I had my pink suit on, and I'm dancing, having the best time. And this lady comes up to me afterwards, this Afro-American lady, and she had this like bleached, like shaved head. And she goes, "You dance like a black guy's trying to get out of you." And I was
Whoa.
like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. Um, but I didn't actually, wasn't sure. But the other part of this is I want to compliment other people on their dance moves, because when I see someone just really in it, you're like, that's it. That's what this is about, right? But that's the bit I felt self conscious about, is like, like, oh, do they think I'm like trying to pick them up or something like
Yeah.
that? Like it's, and so you hestate, but as you said, it's just in that moment. But I also know like the flip side of it is like when someone gives you a compliment, you're like, yeah, thanks, man. This is great. You're just kind of like, yeah, the moves are about to get bigger. Watch this.
Let's do that. Let's start love bombing people. And we're not
Yeah.
expecting anything from them. And they know we've got no agenda. We're never going to see them again. So it's very clean.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful interaction, but it's, yeah.
And so you personally, like, so you've obviously done some of that stuff yourself. And I love the story you shared about as simple as complimenting someone on their shoes and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I do it all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
But what is it? Has anything else, like having gone through this, the depth of this this conversation and the research and stuff, has it changed anything else for you? Or has it shifted anything for you in terms of your own understanding?
Yeah. I think I think you have to put yourself out there more in the world, especially as we sort of, we become, with those whole working from home, working by yourself, all of that, we tend to be quite insular. It can be quite
Yeah.
so I think just go out there and have more experiences, whether it's learning drumming or talking to strangers or sitting in a bar, going to a movie by yourself, joining a choir, something you'd never think of doing.
Yeah.
I think that really helps you just get out there more with people and bring more positive friction into your life as well. Just opens you up in ways that you can't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were talking just before we started the recording as well, just about our own work. And there's a bit of overlap in the sense that we both do some keynote speaking and workshops and stuff, and kind of, I think we kind of almost said that it's like we just want to lean more into the workshop and lean more into the longer term stuff, lean more into the space
Yeah.
where you are building relationships and connections, and the messiness. Like, as I said, you can script 45 minutes on a stage where nobody interrupts you perfectly.
Perfect.
Yeah. There's no messiness to it. There's no unexpected things. People laugh when they're meant to laugh. People clap at the end, but like as soon as you start going longer form, you don't get to script it anymore.
You can't
And
sustain
both of us wanting to like go, yeah, I just want to lean into more of that type of work, but also feeling that at the moment, whether it be just economic pressures or whatever, there's a bit of a pushback on that. And it's like, I think there's another thing again that requires more rumination and stuff. It's like, how do you get people to see that that's true? How do you actually do more work in that way? And that's not just a story for us. I think it's a story for anyone listening.
Yes.
Is like there is in every job, there's the messy part of the job.
Mm.
The bit that isn't clean, that isn't a calendar, that involves other human beings, some pushback and some negotiated outcomes. And yet somehow that's probably what the whole world needs more of as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Simon, that deep immersive work is something you do so well. You're really good at like getting the room to trust you and going where the room needs to go and not being afraid of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but
No,
I
you
will
weren't. But I'm just saying, it's
happily
not a
take it.
skill that people can do easily or comes naturally to people. And you've got to make it rewarding and yet safe for people. It's got to be rich.
Yeah.
You can't shy away from the tough stuff, but people have to feel psychologically safe so they can contribute and they can grow. And yeah.
And I think, if I reflect on that just briefly, it's a lot of it, I think, has to come. And I think which kind of brings us back to the conversation is about a space of non-judgment. Like, I think you have to, when I go into a room with people, it's like, I have no idea about their life experience. I do not know what's going on for them at home. I don't know whether, what their own, like how they've been treated in the workplace before. So you cannot impose judgment on people. Like all you can do is provide a space for them. Do you know what I mean? Like that? But I think it feels like that's somehow important to this whole conversation
It is.
about friction, especially the human aspect of friction. We push back on the behaviors we experience
Mm.
and aren't willing to take the time to understand what sits behind that, like the systemic
Yeah.
creation of these things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's something really interesting about how do we actually provide and act in a way that provide a space that's non-judgmental, but
Yeah.
practice non-judgmental actions and interactions with each other.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow, Yamini, this has been awesome.
It's been great
Hey,
fun. Thank you for challenging me and getting me. It's just been so fascinating. I've loved every minute of it. Yeah.
yeah, and please, if you're in the area, drop in.
I will. And you drop in too. I'm in Hawthorne. I must tell you, Simon did the ultimate friction things. I was hosting, remember we hosted a pirate. This was during
Ah,
peak
the Pirate
lockdown.
TV, yeah.
And Simon said, I've got a gift for you. And I go at the end of the episode on live, you were live. And he goes, where? How could you have a gift for me? He goes, no, open your drawer. And the image of my room and my drawer come up on the TV screen. I open my drawer and there's a bottle of wine. Simon had
Yes.
sent it through, managed to coordinate with my partner, and they put it into my drawer. And there was a photo of my drawer up on them. It was just so weird and surreal. I'll never forget that. I know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that was a particular time when we all needed, like, God, we were all desperate for that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Of that sense of connection.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, the idea of being able to coordinate that and
Incredible. I know.
create surprises, little micro surprises, that was a very important thing at that time in our lives.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that that's something that you still remember. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are going to have to wrap this, unfortunately, as
Thank you
much.
so much. It's been wonderful.
We will talk forever and we will talk again soon. Thank you so much for coming on The Future with Friends, Yamini. It's been an absolute joy to have you. And for all the people listening out there, we look forward to you join us again in the future.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everyone.
Well, that is all for this week's episode of The Future with Friends. If you've enjoyed the episode and you want to support the show, the number one thing you can do is share it with your friends. In fact, it would give me no greater joy than to think in a small way the conversations I'm having with my friends could be a positive influence on the conversations that you are having with yours. Other ways to support the show include going onto the podcasting platform of your choice and giving us a rating. Obviously, I would like it to be 5 stars, but you should ultimately do whatever feels right for you. And if you don't feel quite ready for that yet, if we're not at that point in our relationship, the other thing you can do is send me small gifts in the mail. I always enjoy receiving them. Well, that is all for this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with the next episode. And so until then, my friends, I look forward to seeing you again.